In just 24 hours, Lindsay Lohan begins what may be her toughest role yet. She's scheduled to begin serving a 90-day jail sentence for violating probation. Will this new trip behind bars help her turn her life around? Andrea Canning has a look at Lohan's final hours of freedom and how stars like her have fared in prison.
Lindsay Lohan has chosen to spend her final days as a free woman in rehab here at the Pickford Loft Sober Living Community in Los Angeles. The facility is owned by Lohan's newly appointed lawyer, Robert Shapiro. He says he, quote, agreed to represent Miss Lohan on the condition that she complies with all of the terms of her probation, including a requirement of jail time. The actress's hard partying ways hit close to home for Shapiro, who lost his son to substance abuse in 2005. He says he wants to assist in implementing a treatment approach recommended by medical professionals for Miss Lohan's long-term recovery and sobriety.
She's writing in her journals, she's painting, she's allowed to tweet, she's allowed to be in communication.
Lohan's struggle is a common one for many of Hollywood's elite. Nicole Richie battled a heroin addiction before she was sentenced to 4 days in jail. Though she only served 82 minutes, Richie bounced back, starting a family and launching a fashion line. Charlie Sheen's acting career has been coupled with decades of substance abuse and several stints in rehab. But even after years of treatment, Sheen spent this past Christmas in jail for assaulting his wife. He is awaiting sentencing and could face several years in prison. Paris Hilton served 23 days in prison after a DUI conviction and driving with a suspended license. She spoke to Larry King 2 days after her release.
It was a very traumatic experience, but I feel like God does make everything happen for a reason.
But these days, Paris still finds herself on the wrong side of the law. According to a French newspaper, Corse Matin, she was detained in France this weekend after dogs detected a small amount of marijuana in her bag.
Lindsay's jail sentence will be very similar to where Paris Hilton went. She will have a sort of a very sanitary living conditions. It'll be very whitewashed, very simple, very plain.
And for the actress whose life is anything but simple these days, it may be exactly what she needs. For Good Morning America, Andrea Canning, ABC News, New York.
And we're going to get more on this now from addiction expert William Cope Moyers, the vice president of the Hazelden Foundation. Thanks for joining us again, Bill. And let's look at this. Lindsay's been to rehab a couple of times. She's even been to jail before. Is there any way to generalize on what impact jail has on addicts?
Well, at this point, it might be the best thing that could happen to Lindsay. She needs some time away from the reality of her life, and she needs to spend some time thinking about what's happened to her. She needs to be responsible and pay the consequences. But it's not just the jail time that's going to be important. It's the treatment time that she's getting through her connection with Robert Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro may be the best thing that's happened to Lindsay Lohan in the last couple of years.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because her father, Michael Lohan, came out over the weekend and said it's one of the worst things that could have happened. He says there's a conflict of interest, that Robert Shapiro should be working on appealing her sentence, and he's got a conflict because he runs this treatment facility.
Well, I'm not going to judge what a parent thinks about their daughter's lawyer, but I think the reality here is that nothing else has worked for Lindsay. If she's not careful, she's going to become the Marilyn Monroe, of this generation. She's going to die if she doesn't recover. So the best thing that can happen to her is to have some jail time, give her some time to think about it, take personal responsibility, step away from her parents, step away from the world that hasn't been very good for her so far, and really take responsibility by understanding that she has a disease. It's a disease that has no cure but has a solution. It's treatment, it's personal responsibility. Ultimately, it's recovery, because only Lindsay Lohan can do it in the end.
And I guess that she helps ease that transition to jail by starting the treatment before she goes in. Otherwise, I imagine many people go in and face a cold turkey situation where they really have physical problems.
Well, that's right. I mean, treatment works and recovery is possible. We know that at the Hazelden Foundation where I work. But the reality is that for some people, you have to have consequences that include a jail time. I mean, Lindsay's had more than one opportunity to recover, and she hasn't been able to do that so far. So I think stepping back from the world that she's known, which is a world that's very difficult. Hollywood is a tough place to be sober. Stepping away from that, serving some time, giving it some thought, and working with treatment professionals, working with her attorney who knows personally himself the impact of addiction on the family. I think this is the best thing that could happen to Lindsay because, frankly, George, she's running out of options. She has as much opportunity, or she should have as much opportunity to recover as anybody else. But oftentimes for people, it's the consequences, which include jail time, that allows them to wake up and take that personal responsibility to live a life of recovery.
Well, let's hope it works. William Cope Moyers, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, George.